we want to. Is this good? You guys ready for a major tonal shift? Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you guys for being here. I've warned my students this is uncensored stuff, okay? And so be prepared for that. I want to thank particularly my friends, Rob, my best friend Rob, my poetry group, Star Poetry Group, Ben Poetry Group. Ben helped me a lot over this summer. We worked really intensely on these poems that I'm going to read, so thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it. And others, I've even worked with students over the summer. Travis helped me with one of these poems too, so thank you for everyone and all of your help. I'm going to start by reading a couple of poems from my collection, Pretty Marrow. And then I'm going to read my new stuff that I've been working on, which is a collection that is going to be called The Obituary Addendums. The reason I'm going to start with poems from the book is because they kind of preface what's going to happen in the obituary addendums. Both of my parents are alcoholics, severe alcoholics. My mother, when she was 49 years old, 7 years ago, decided that she wanted to kill herself, and she was going to kill herself by drinking herself to death. And so she started that process she had always been drinking, but she started not eating, and she didn't eat for about 3 months, and she just drank alcohol. And we didn't know what to do, and so we just kept taking her to the hospital and back to the hospital, and she kept getting worse and worse and worse. My father is also a severe alcoholic, and my mother did not die. And nobody knows how she survived what she did to herself. She got brain damage. She couldn't walk or talk or swallow. She had to be rehabilitated. And this first is the opening poem of my book. This poem describes the moment that the nurse and the doctors were trying to explain to me, the oldest daughter who became responsible for everything, and still am actually, for everyone in the family, trying to explain to me what had happened to my mother, that all of the myelin sheaths had dissolved in her brain. And it's called Shocked. Think of the tick, tick, tick of wires against an unsuspecting pine over and over until the buzz of electricity nuzzles through. Think of the blazing white lick of stripped wire on stripped wire, sparks, white slashes, misfires. Think of chewing on foil, tangy metal on metal, a dull ache in your skull as your eyes roll back. Then think. The nurse is talking about your mother, who guzzled liquor for years till the nerve sheaths dissolved in her brain. She hears rats scratch under cold hospital walls, sees ants pour out of cracks. Spanish program on TV, your mother interprets the intricate plot. Your mother does not speak Spanish, and she helps with crossword puzzles, spells Mai Tai, MMBAXRW. Remember she told you that as a kid she thought LMNO was one letter, elemento. When you were a kid, your job was to switch the laundry, and your mother warned, don't touch the washer and dryer at the same time. So you stood, wet socks lumped in your hands like dead rats, your parents' screams surging through the pipes above you. You held your breath, touched the cold, ungrounded machines at the same time, your blood shrieking with a shock more terrible and delicious than licking the icy nub of a battery, the dull purr and whiz of it on your tongue. Then, like now, you ignore every warning, because maybe like her, you never stop needing to harm yourself, just in case there's something more alive inside the squealing drill of pain. And this poem is about my father. It's a letter I wrote to my 16-year-old self. Letter to a 16-year-old girl. You want your stepdad to love you, so you vacuum the living room for 45 minutes, down on your knees, run that dirty hose along every edge, scour the stairs, the couch, suck each cushion clean, clean, clean. But when he comes home, he sees one tiny scrap of paper right in the middle of the floor, and he turns to glare at you and say, fucking worthless as usual. Just get in your car, girl, and drive, don't look back. You don't have to love him, but I know you will. You'll drive those gray country roads and sob because his father shredded him with a belt, because he was always the tallest boy at school, because he had a lazy eye. And you'll love him because when he got the call to war, you saw him cry and guzzle a bottle of vodka when he thought no one was watching, rev up his motorcycle and race away. He tore around the blind corner so fast that he slid, bike on top of him, through 50 feet of searing gravel. He limped home, bloody, his whole knee pink hamburger. They shipped him anyway. You'll love him because he hardly ever laid a hand on you, though he wanted to, when he was brilliant red and trembling with rage at you, at himself, at the whole goddamn world. So I wanted to preface my new poems, the obituary addendums, with those poems because my little brother, the youngest, I'm the oldest daughter, my youngest brother, who is 24 years old, last July drank himself to death. By all accounts, it seems that he did it on purpose, and he did the same thing that my mother did. He drank without eating for months until he died. And so, well, I'm taking you on a terrible journey. This is literally, I've decided, okay, he died on July 7th. I have to write about this. I cannot let my brother, he's dead, but I won't let him die. And so I'm doing this for my brother. His name was Dylan Alexander Thomas. He was born on April 20th, 1989, and he died on July 7th, 2013. This was the very first poem after his death that I was able to write. The first poem after July 22nd, 2013. I better preface this. I was carrying around a bag with all the stuff I needed to write his obituary, and so I just was carrying around this bag all the time. The first poem after. I'm digging into the death bag. I'm doing it. Writing with a mortuary pen. I'm facing it. I have to. Even if all I can say is the zip line in Hawaii. How did I do it? Climb to the top of the platform. The one that looked like gallows. 2 lifelines dangling their glinting buckles. I climbed. I was fastened. All my equipment double checked. I fixed my eyes to the point, 1,800 feet away, the other side. I leaned into emptiness, the abyss. Absence makes sense. Absence miss my heart with your target, oh my little brother. I flew above trees, all those hungry teeth. I flew over wildflowers, their alarming, unfamiliar faces. I flew toward the place I could plant my feet, and I made it, goddammit. I was brave and I flew. Started to become obsessed with rewriting my brother's obituary. I had to write his obituary, and it was just not enough. How can you write your little brother's obituary and have that be enough? And so I started calling these poems obituary addendums, and I started to write them in the form, a column form of the obituary. And I was forcing myself to look at the obituary. The obituary is on every page. I'm going to erase that when I send it out. I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to do with this form, but obituary addendum number 3. Syracuse, Utah. I'm a drunk, Dad says. We sit on stiff chairs smoking cigarettes in the thick garage, July sun baking. I'm a drunk, I say, and your mother's a drunk, he says, suddenly bright-eyed. But then he shrinks. He's crying. Inside the house, Sean slams doors, laughs, punches out all the walls and the staircase to the basement, then calmly conducts conversations. Like I said, he says, when we got to the hospital, they took me straight to the chapel. Now Sean's got all Dylan's savings, $200 for a new car, and he's peeling out in Dad's new black Camaro for beer. We're having a fucking party on Dylan, he screams, wild-eyed. This is what he would have wanted. So we cheers, beer after beer, to Dylan, barely 5 hours gone. Pretend he didn't die here, right here, on the kitchen linoleum of alcohol poisoning, choking on his own vomit. Pretend Sean didn't pound his chest, 911 on the phone. Pretend we are not walking over and over the cleaned up space where our brother died. At the spring, 3 days after, I arrange myself on these rocks to watch water surge from dark earth into sunlight. I marble myself into a statue. For us, dippers charmingly bob on rocks. I stare, make my eyes white and blank, my tears just tiny diamond pricks. Was it just last week, under the outcropping, we saw the sheep gone feral, one who survived 10 years ago when the farm truck rolled? So still, we mistook her for a gray boulder. To soothe me, you speak, your voice like water bubbling bright noise. To soothe me, you speak, my brother's just died. When was it we saw the sheep? How did she survive the downside up crush? How did she open her eyes to the litter of blood? Monkey flowers stare at me, tremble yellow lips that seem skinned, flecked with blood, their throats open in little screams. How did the sheep right her dizzy fleece, flee through the bright portal into brutal hills? Oh, through what awful darkness does this water travel? I crumble, you catch me, you hold me so tight I can hardly breathe. Oh, harbor me, my slim, my damaged spirit. Obituary addendum number 1, survived by father, Nordic Valley, Utah. The rest of us Dad called worthless chicken shit, and we crept around the cold house, dissolved ourselves into shadow, trying always to dodge Dad's brain-shrieking slaps to the backs of our heads. Dylan burst into the world, eyes adjusting to Dad's drunk and stumbling danger, until Dylan's eyes smoldered a secret anger all his own, and soon he grew wild brown curls that even at 2 he refused to have cut, though it really pissed Dad off. One afternoon in the gray living room, Dill danced around, diaper off in his bright green Ninja Turtle t-shirt. I told him to apologize to Dad for refusing his diaper, and he waved his little dick at Dad, taunting, "I'm sorry, Dad. I am so sorry, Dad." I cringed, my skin pricked cold, knowing the red, ruthless strike. "Stop, Dylan, stop," I begged, but he wouldn't. There he was, 3 years old, calling Dad out, calling him on. "Fuck you," said Dill's little dick, flapping up and down. Dad's face changed dangerous, black rising in his eyes. Then he threw back his head. I could see all his teeth, and he laughed till his voice rasped. That fucker laughed so hard he cried. Obituary addendum, minor in possession, Logan, Utah. Midnight, you stood in handcuffs in the driveway while the house thudded and glowed with the post-wedding party. The cop was friendly, pleased at your etiquette, and he was terribly sorry, but he'd still have to charge you with minor in possession. "I get it, man. You have to do your job," you said. The cop asked, "Where'd you get the beer?" You replied, "I totally stole it," and winked at me. My legs almost collapsed. This was my ass on the line, but I know you never cracked under pressure, Dylan. Never. The officer, smiling, released you into my custody, and the whole house celebrated your vindication. Tall Chris poured wine from a silver bag down all our throats, Jack Daniel's shots for everyone, and Christ, we must celebrate your freedom with some bong hits and Bob Marley singing, "Every little thing is gonna be all right." And we square danced, you and I partners, beaming and fumbling the hooked arm swing. And then Chris B passed out. Tall Chris magic markered a penis on his heel. And when he woke up, all hell broke loose between the Chris's in the dark backyard. Vicious fists and bloody lips, and you and I yelling, "Stop, fucking stop it, stop," we screamed. But then we didn't want it to stop. It was too damn funny. And we hooted, wild and wet grass, bowing, dancing, do-si-do your partner, yes, promenade home. The game. Oh, Dylan. The night the first snow fell, the first snow after your death, I dreamt we were climbing Mount Timpanogos, one rock face so high the top's invisible, below a sheer drop into space. On the cliff and cold we hold one another. You're on my lap, a naked toddler. From my slippery lap you slip off the cliff. For a moment I lose you again, but by one arm I catch, pull you back, pull you close, our noses touch, we're eye to eye. I know the game, I know the rules. I stare and stare, my eyes are dry. If I blink first, I lose. Obituary addendum number 5, prose poem containing death. The garage choked with 97-degree heat, cigarette smoke. For hours and hours, no, for days, the door from the house to the garage creaked open, slammed shut. For hours and days, it lasted for days, we smoked. My dad, my sisters, my brother Sean opening the door, disappearing into the house for hours, reappearing with bloodshot eyes, snot-smeared faces. My nephews, my niece, my mother, my stepmother, uncles, neighbors, strangers, muffled scream from inside, "No, do not do it." The door slamming open, Dad shrieking, "No one is allowed in the fucking basement." His voice ricocheting off cement walls, amplifying till my inner ear ached the same as it did when I stood at a rock concert too close to the 10-foot speaker. I vomited. I cried the contacts out of my eyes, everyone dissolving. And then the blue calm of evening, the moonlight, a pale silver poultice cooling my skin. In darkness, I awoke. In a darkness of such weight it smelled like fry grease, like sweaty sheets. The passage was narrow. I held tight to a handrail. This was a staircase. At the base, a flickering yellow light. Muffled laughter. I crept down. At the bottom, I stood, dressed in gauze of shadow, looking in. It was warm, humid, as if I were inside of a mouth. In the room, a massive man, fat oozing out of his armchair. He slurped as he sucked flesh from a bright white bone, belching. The floor was choked with hundreds of empty vodka bottles. The television light bathed him with urine. Into a bucket he reached and pulled out another hunk of meat. On the television screen played the last hour. Dylan, violently shaking the kitchen chair, screaming at it. He thought it was a person, tearing its legs off, vomiting, collapsing on the linoleum, vomiting, the vomit in his eyes. Sean screaming, "Dylan, Dylan, Dylan, Dylan," calling 911, giving Dylan CPR, the ambulance screeching in, the stretcher, the ambulance door slamming shut, the moment in the ambulance where the young paramedic with his stethoscope looked up to say, "He's dead." Just 2 more. The other thing is my whole family are atheists. I don't know how that happened growing up here in Utah, but well, maybe that's why it happened. The conversation with my brother. Stumbled into darkness, whispered, "Dylan, are you there? I'm listening." And I listened so hard I heard concrete sizzle, moonlight blister, stars rip the sky's black fabric. I listened until I heard you say, I'm here, I can hear you, Shan. And as always, I ached for us both to be glad, so I told you how our sisters and I, huddled in the dingy mortuary, flipped through the heavy book to pick the right image for your service notes. We saw Jesus in a luminous grove, Jesus with a little boy on his knee, smiling up. How hysterical to paste your face over the child's, see you gazing up, the gentle eyes. And when the funeral director left the room, all at once we burst into laughter. And Dylan, you laughed so hard I cried. Yeah, you said, you so should have fucking done it. I smiled into the blur, hot moon floating, heaven, hell. I am not going crazy. I am in Utah, in Wellsville. Today is the 15th of July. My book was published just a couple of months before Dylan died. And after he died, I realized that this poem is for Dylan. So this poem will always be Dylan's poem. I try to read it at every reading. This poem was born out of seeing a piece of garbage floating in the Logan River. My paper boat for Dylan. You were an albino trout waving its tail in the river's cold current. But when I crept closer, I saw you were a white swath of plastic, perhaps fabric torn from a dress or paper. You were a suicide note or a love poem snagged on a ragged branch. I wanted to peel off my socks, wade into the shock of winter runoff, wanted to take you with me, your words, your little body. I imagined someone folded you into a warm pocket, dropped you by accident, or pinned you to a tree till spring wind ripped you down. Why did I not save you, lay you in the sun? Why did I not lift you, moss limp and lovely, press your river-blurred words to my face? You are my love note to the world. My paper boat. I wish you could let go and swirl to a place unblemished, where light could pour its honey onto your face. I wish you could let go and forget I stood here on the bank, body filled with river stones, hand clutching a heavy set of keys. I should have opened my mouth to taste you, chewed and swallowed you, rescued you from unsnagging into new violence, tumble lick of rocks, river gnashing you, ragdoll. Why did I not kneel, crawl into the river to you, my bright pinwheel? Thank you.